Good morning all. Sorry for starting slightly late. A warm welcome to those attending and also to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. Details of the business to be considered today is shown on the agenda, copies which are available on the room and is also accessible online under the broadcast. For those present in the room and intending to speak, please note that you will be filmed and any statement you make will be recorded and made public. For those solely observing in the room today, you may wish to know that the camera is angled away from the public gallery where you are sitting. At the end of the public part of this meeting, when the committee moves to deliberation, the live broadcast on YouTube will be cut. A reminder to anyone speaking today that your voice will only be audible online if the microphone is switched on. Fire alarm. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm goes off, please follow our officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting point. For those in the room, please switch off any mobile phones or devices before the meeting starts or put them on silent. Please note that councillors or committee members may use their laptops or tablets during the meeting to view the agenda and paperwork. Resident feedback forms. If you're so minded, can you please complete one of the orange resident feedback forms? The information on these forms is intended to help us improve the way in which we run our meetings. Forms can be completed and left in this room for collection after the meeting, or completing and returned by post to the address on the form. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also complete the form online, and the link is shown below the broadcast. Declaration of interest. Please ensure that you identify which items you have an interest in, state whether your interest is pecuniary or non-pecuniary, and give the reasons that you have an interest. Members need not declare an interest in any item on the agenda where they have already listed so on their declarations of registers of interest. Furthermore, you do not need to declare an interest just because you are, for example, a ward councillor. We will then make a start. We will start off with agenda item 1, apologies.
All members are present, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest in the matters coming before this meeting? No. To confirm that all items will be considered in public, or part 1, and we will have only deliberations in part 2. Is that correct? Thank you. Are there any matters that have been notified in advance or urgent? No. Thank you. In which case, we will make a start. And we will start off with Ginny from the Regulatory Service. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. So you will all have received the report bundle and will be familiar with the application. There's an addendum with 2 additional matters, which 2 has been distributed. So in brief, this is a hearing to consider a contested application for a new premises in respect of the proposed 10 restaurant, 10 Victoria Road, Ruislip, HA4 0AA. This application was submitted by Mr. Bajram Mani on behalf of the applicant of 10 Restaurant Limited, for whom Mr. Mani is the sole director. The proposal is to authorize the sale of alcohol both on and off on Sundays to Thursdays from 12 to 23:30 hours, and on Fridays and Saturdays from 12 to 100 hours, plus live music between the hours of 2300 and 12:30 on 00:30 on Fridays and Saturdays, recorded music and late night refreshment between the hours of 2300 and 23:30 Sundays to Thursdays, and 2300 and 100 on Fridays and Saturdays. So it's all listed on the agenda pack as well. So, the opening hours are from 12 to midnight Thursday to Sunday, and 12 to 1:30 on Friday and Saturday. The premises currently has the benefit of a premises license as detailed in the report at Appendix 9. And the applicant was transferred onto this license on 17th of March 2021. We have received 8 representations in total, of which 6 are from residents. 1 is from Councillor Markham, who is the ward councillor, and another one is from the licensing authority, acting as the responsible authority under the Act. I recommend the grant of the license. However, due consideration should be given to suggestions made by the licensing authority regarding a reduction in hours and addition of conditions as deemed appropriate to uphold the licensing objectives. But this is a decision for the committee, and I invite the committee to determine the application, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ginny. Councillors, do we have any questions at this time? In which case we will move on to hear from the applicant. Mr. Chumdell, if you want to go first.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Mr. Panchal, I completely apologise.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair. Chair, I'm representing the applicant today. My sincere apologies from the applicant, Mr. Money, who had a recent family bereavement and has gone to Albania for that. But his manager, Mr. Bridgell, is with us today, who is running the premises. And I've been authorized by Mr. Money to run this application. If there are any questions or any objections before I start, I'll leave it to the chairman. Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, firstly, I'm going to briefly let you know that my client does hold a personal license. My client holds the premises at the address that mentioned. I'm just going to go through that. We have had a meeting. The client has had a meeting. If you look at on page 4 of your bundle with the SBAT, and have reduced the live music hours to 12:30 on Fridays and Saturdays. The recorded music remains the same, and the late night refreshment remains the same, as we will be clearing the clients to move out from the premises. So that's a half an hour gap that we are looking into. Discussions have had with the other responsible authorities, and we are not disputing any conditions to be laid out. This is going to be a restaurant where there will be table meals provided. The customers are going to sit on the table. The alcohol is going to be totally provided by the waiter service. It is not a bar where people come and drink on the bar. Hence, it will be well controlled. Mr. Vijay is going to be the manager there, who has a vast experience in this trade, having worked with the premises in Café Rouge, Milan Center, Milan Garden, in various places around the country. Does understand the 4 licensing objectives, has 20 years experience in the trade, so we are going to be in good hands. There will be closed circuit television, CCTV, all the conditions. You look in page 9, the conditions looked at prevention of crime and disorder. I can understand that there is a concern by the local people regarding the prevention of public nuisance, but I can assure the committee and I can assure them that there will be a sound limiter at the premises. There will be sound limiter project, and they have carried out some works to make sure it is soundproofed at the moment, so that will allow the sound not to travel and not to disturb. We will be getting in touch with the environment officers when the sound limiter is installed to make sure the right decibels are put up at the premises. Hence, Chairman, we feel we are happy to take any questions on this or any discussions that we would like to have with the licensing officer if there is any conditions, and that we are happy to work along with the neighbours and the license be granted on the reduced hours that we have agreed.
Thank you. Will we go to questions? Councillor Gardner.
Can you let me know how many properties are actually above this restaurant? Are they're residences? Are they? I've seen a picture here that they look like flats.
Sorry, I'm not with you.
Do people live above the premises?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I believe there are about 7 or 8.
Just hang on 1 second.
Thank you. I believe there are about between 6 and 8 properties living above the premises. So all above premises are flats. We have one flat above our restaurant currently. So yeah.
Have you liaised with any of the residents above to ask them how they feel about it? Have you actually spoken to any of the residents?
To my understanding, Mr. Money hasn't contacted any of the residents so far, but our intention was always to try and speak to them, but he hasn't done so far, to my understanding now.
Councillor Sullivan, any questions?
I was only going to talk about, I was going to raise the question of,
Mike.
sorry. I was going to raise the question to ask you to clarify when you talk about serving meals. Will the meals stop? Will the meals stop with alcohol at 11:30, or is 11:30 the cut-off point for a final meal?
Ma'am, if you look at page 4 of your pack, the live music will stop at 12:30. The recorded music will be there till 1 o'clock. When I say recorded music, it's light music behind. The refreshments, late night refreshments, that includes food, will be there served up to 1 o'clock. So last orders would be at 12:30, and they could finish the food at 1 o'clock. And sale of alcohol will also be with the food up to 1 o'clock.
So rather late, isn't it? When you're in a residential area with people above.
Yeah. Ma'am, it's a normal procedure that when families, this is a family restaurant. We are not talking about youngsters jumping into a nightclub or pulling down and dancing, or that's not what our intentions are. The intention of the restaurant is to serve proper meals on Fridays and Saturdays for families to sit in, have a quiet meal with them. So 12:30 is a normal last orders to finish their meal and finish their drinks before they can depart. Another very careful attention will be paid with there will be a dispersal policy in place at the premises, and all the staff, like Mr. Bridgell himself, is trained under the conflict management course, so that brings us into a very safe environment at the premises. So we're not expecting loud music or amplified music to be played at the premises, which would cause the neighbours a bit of a problem.
Except noise does travel, doesn't it?
It does, but we are putting down a sound limiter, which I've just mentioned, which will again be in control with the environmental health from the council, who would come and work out the decibels required to make sure those decibels are not beyond the neighbours' concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a question, just carrying on the sound. You've done some soundproofing, you say. Can you talk about that in a bit more detail, please?
Yes, a bit of soundproofing work has been carried out at the premises. That is why, hence, when we had the meeting with the SBET, then they looked at it and decided that the hours be reduced for the live music.
I note from the pack that there's been several complaints about sound during your refurbishment, where residents have complained to the management that there's been excessive sound and it's continuing. Can you talk about that at all?
I think we did look at that concern when I was talking to my applicant during the works carried out. I think you're looking at the works when the works were carried out, and we do apologize that the works were carried out when it shouldn't have been carried out during those hours. But there is no longer works now carried out. The works are completed.
I think the worry of the committee is if the sound was that bad while the premises was not yet open, then how can we ensure that that behaviour won't continue?
Well, we are working with the responsible authorities since I've taken over the case, and we've made sure all the responsible authorities are spoken to, and we work along with the responsible authorities. That is the aim of the premises, to make sure the neighbours also. Unfortunately, we haven't contacted the neighbours, but that will be our second move to make sure we work along with the neighbours.
Thank you. Just going on to another question. In Ginny's presentation, you talked about off sales as well. Can you explain what kind of off-sales you're going to be doing? And will that be with food, and will there be delivery vehicles coming in to collect?
Yeah, all the food delivered will be with the deliveries with the alcohol would be with the food, but majority of what we are talking off sales is when people come to the restaurant and they are having a bottle of wine or something, and the bottle of wine is left over, they will be taking it over with them. We're not concerned about saying that we're going to do a lot of off sales with the alcohol. That is not the main aim of the restaurant.
But there will be some sort of...
There will be some sort of sales.
Off sales.
Off sales, but that will be again with the meal.
But consequently there'll be drivers coming up to pick up those meals and bikes, and could that enhance the noise?
I can ask.
Sorry. So I just want to clarify, in terms of our sales, we haven't done and we don't intend to do any off-sale sale. The only off-sale sale in that, as we just mentioned, is that when people finish their food and then they don't finish their wine, is for them to take the wine with them. So we haven't done any off-sale selling on there with drivers coming in there, and we don't intend to do such a thing.
Thank you. Councillors, have you got... Councillor Gardner.
Mr. Panchal, something you said that last orders at 12:30, then people, you're saying it's family restaurant. Well, quite frankly, if somebody wants to eat a meal at 12:30, I'd welcome them to have indigestion. But when people leave at 12:30, how are you going to guarantee that they're not going to make a noise? Because if you're only responsible for the area that the premises is in, you cannot stop people going outside and shouting. I mean, I am mindful of the people that live near and above. I don't really think you can logically guarantee that people can't make a noise. And people, if they've had a couple of bottles of wine hanging about outside waiting for a cab, they're not going to just be numb, are they? Dumb, sorry.
Ma'am, the way I would put it down is under the 4 licensing objectives, public nuisance is something that I will be dealing with my client on a very robust way. And the best way to deal with the restaurants, from my experience, would be to make sure mobile numbers for the taxis are put up in the restaurant. Dispersal policy is placed in the restaurant, which says clearly that if you want a taxi over there, we will order it for you. We will make sure we will ask you to wait till the taxi comes up. Or when they're drunk, we would make sure we would not be serving them. We'll make sure that the client is leaving and does not make noise. We will put down, please consider our neighbors. Posters would be put up to make sure to consider our neighbors during the departure of the place. Now, with that in place, with the experience Mr. Vijay has in 20 years running the premises, and he hasn't breached anything, I think we are in safe hands. That is what we feel.
It's a bit like saying no cycling on pavements and expecting people not to cycle on pavements. You have to be very, very careful and rigid about what you tell people they can and can't do, because people leaving at 12:30 are bound to make a noise. You know, that's to say you're a bit sort of gung-ho about this, Mr. Pritchard, with the greatest respect, but I think there's some... I mean, I'm more concerned about the people that this will affect, and we don't need to be told about the licensing objectives, the greatest respect.
Ma'am, all we can do is we can do our best in making sure the 4 licensing objectives are robustly promoted. I agree what you're saying. You may come across, maybe in a year, 1 or 2 cases, but we will make sure that doesn't happen. We will come down to a zero tolerance. That is what our idea is when running the restaurant. And that is a zero tolerance we are looking at. There are so many questions we could ask, but our main idea of the Licensing Act 2003 is to make sure the 4 licensing objectives are robustly promoted, make sure we look into it, and ways of means to make sure the neighbors are safe. And that is what we're going to be looking at when running this restaurant.
Thank you. I've got another question regarding waste management. On our bundle on page 51, there's quite a few photos there of poor waste management, which consequently has caused rats and foxes to get in. Obviously, this is, again, before the venue is opened. So do you have a robust waste management policy, and how can we assure neighbours that it won't look like it does in some of these photos on page 51?
I did bring this matter to my client, and I was also concerned, but my client has just sent me a copy this morning, or brought a copy this morning, that they are dealing with the West collection very robustly, and sometimes they do get an email from the West collection which says that well, they could not. So there are documents here that they've been forcing the West collection people, and they're looking into it and saying to the West collection, look, if you can't do the work properly for us, we will be looking for somebody else. Am I right in saying that? And I'd like him to stress more on that, Chairman.
Well, just to add to that, basically, especially in the last month, we have increased the waste bins. So we've got 2 large bins and 2 bottle glass bins in there, rather than what it used to be before, because I saw that that wasn't sufficient in terms of waste management. And I can assure you that in the last month, there haven't been any waste management apart from one miscollection that was done by the company itself, basically, which I've already raised with the company in terms of that. And we did have a visit from the council regarding it, and I did show them the proof in terms of our increase of waste management and the miscollections that we had regarding the company.
Thank you. So will you be having a waste management policy in place?
Yeah, sure.
And would you be happy for the relative authorities at the council to look at that and agree that waste management policy along with the dispersal policy?
Yes, Chairman, we're going to be doing that.
Thank you. And then my other question was to do with parking around the back. There seems to have been some issues in the past where cars have been blocked in. So would there be some sort of management scheme there?
The trouble with the parking is we having a real trouble with that. The reason being is because even people that don't have business in terms of either residents or the businesses in there sometimes come and park the cars in there, which is not ideal for many reasons, because I had delivery coming during the day and I can't bring the delivery in because of that issue. We normally just have one car parking in there, and that would be probably either my car or Mr. Manny's car, but we don't allow other cars to park behind there. And even so, if it's a case of a very short period of a few minutes, we leave a number in there. I happen to have in more than one occasion where after I finished work, maybe at 1 o'clock in the morning, my car was blocked in there, and I had to wait for another hour to try and find whose car it is behind my car, that I couldn't go home either. So that is an issue that we want to try and address and trying to work out how we can deal with that. And so we are open to discussion in terms of dealing with that.
I mean, in the past, we have sometimes insisted that venues have a telephone number, mobile phone number available to residents at all times. If there's noise complaint or parking complaint, would you be happy to do something along those lines?
Yes, ma'am. That's the first thing that we're going to be doing when I'm working with the premises. To be honest, I've lately been appointed for these premises, but we were going to look into all those matters which I normally look into, and we're going to do that.
Thank you. Councillors, have you got any more questions at this stage? No. Okay, thank you very much for that. We will move on for now to the responsible authorities. Daniel.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, members of the Licensing Subcommittee. I'm Daniel Ferrer from the licensing team. I'm the manager there, and I'm here on behalf of as a responsible authority, representing the licensing authority, in relation to this application that we've heard about, a new application under the Licensing Act for 10 Restaurant Limited. Chairman, my full representation can be found on Appendix 4, page 57 to 58. I don't intend to go through every single line. A lot has been said already and the concerns been raised, but I'd like to make our comments in relation to our concerns and make them as a matter of record, if you like. It's worth pointing out that 2 weeks ago, I believe I spoke to the agent. It was on a separate matter, only just to sort of say that they were representing the applicant, and so there's been no other agreements or discussions on that matter. And so that's why we are maintaining our representation here today. And it's namely on the 2 licensing objectives of prevention of public nuisance and public safety. And if I move swiftly over to prevention of public nuisance, this is our main area of concern, Chairman. We have, quite simply, we have concerns in relation to the finishing times. A lot has been said already, particularly regulated entertainment in the form of recorded music, live music, going up to 100 Friday, Saturday mornings going into the following day. We feel that there's a real risk of potential disturbance to residents living within the vicinity, and that's music noise. But also, as Councillor Gardner is pointing out, if customers, patrons have been consuming alcohol, there would have been part of that entertainment, if you like, consumed alcohol, and potentially leaving half an hour after the authorised times. And let's not forget, this licensing objective is about the prevention of public nuisance. We're not looking at finally opening up the premises and dealing with the issues now. This is the time to deal with it. It's prevention. And so we look at the applicant's application, and we see, in terms of prevention of public nuisance, only 3 measures raised in their application: notices, a strict policy not to serve drunk people, and also appropriate measures of signage in relation to CCTV. And I'm aware that there has been discussions and agreements made with our ASBIT team, but we say that it doesn't go far enough. 12:30 for live entertainment, but what about recorded music? We've been told that it's still going to be those permitted times, and that can be amplified recorded music as well. And we say that there should be additional measures, and one, I'm grateful that there's been pointed out, a sound limiter, and also that solid condition about no noise or music or vibration shall emanate from the premises. And we would advise on those conditions if the application was granted. Firstly, I think we have to establish whether these times are appropriate. My final point on prevention of public nuisance is that, and it hasn't been picked up here, the applicant has mentioned in their application on section 14 and 15 the use of the external area, which I think is helpful, but to technically have that as a controller measure or condition, that should fit in the operating schedule. And I note that they have raised 2200 as the appropriate time, which we feel could be lower, reduced, depending on what the subcommittee decide. For that to be a controller measure. Moving over to public safety, only a couple of points to make on this one. We note that the applicant has mentioned that they will deal with all health and safety, but we feel that's quite a generic measure. So something more specific in terms of, for example, the escape routes, and I've detailed a condition for suggestion: the means of escape provided for the premises shall be maintained unobstructed, free of hazard, etc., etc. A point that I've just sort of looked at while briefly looking at the application, the previous or the current licence for Puntos, as it was, has a capacity of 60, I see. And so it's interesting to find out whether that will still be the case, because that will be a public safety issue. And if we're talking about 60 diners, then that's much more controllable than, say, several hundred. And so that is it. The final point I want to make is more of a technical point. I've briefly talked about the old licence. But what we would say that if this was granted today, that there are some conditions, some measures stating that the old previous Puntos licence be surrendered if this one was granted. So more of a technical point. Chairman, those are my comments in relation to this application for a new premises licence. If you have any questions or queries, I'm quite happy to take them. But for now, those are my submissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I have a question. You talked quite a lot there about the responsible authority being worried about the closing time. What would you suggest is a more appropriate time?
I would firstly point out, and Mr. Pash will probably come straight in here at it, is that the opening times are not, licensable, and so technically they're not controllable. But and I'm not trying to sort of like sit on the fence or. I would say an appropriate time is half an hour after the permitted times chosen for the licensed activities. I think that's more enough, considering that it's going to be, they say, a restaurant.
Okay, thank you. Sitting on the fence there slightly, but I completely understand. And I've noted what you talk about, escape route or evacuation policy. I'm sure we can, in a moment, discuss that with the applicant. Councillors, have you got any questions for the responsible authority at this time? No. In which case, we will move on to other parties. There has been some submissions granted. Are there any that need to be read out?
None that need to be read out, Chairman. The only people that need to make representations are present.
Thank you. In which case, we will go on. I don't mind if Ms. Jones or Ms. Mills wants to talk first, but okay, please.
Hi, I'm Marion Mills, and I live above the restaurant at number 10A. And as far as soundproofing, they promised me when they refurbished that there will be soundproofing, and there isn't. And there is a man what goes in there on a Friday and Saturday with a microphone, so it is amplified. And on several occasions I've had the ASBO team out to monitor their music, and they've gone down there and asked them to turn it down. I've actually sent emails when they opened up as 10 on several occasions before I started contacting the council again about the noise, asking them to turn their music down, and on several occasions it's been gone 12 o'clock. And as far as them saying about the outside area, they have tables and chairs outside, so you're getting people what are sitting having a meal and then can go outside with their drink and drink their drink, and I can hear them talking in where I live, because I live right above them. And this has been going on for a few years now, even with Punto. If you'll go back, you'll find that I even complained about the noise when it was Puntos as well.
Thank you for that. Would you like to speak?
Hi, I'm a neighbour of Miss Mills, and I can attest to there being noise, and also, as you can see in the photos, waste piling up of the parking is always an issue. It's been an issue for several years, in fact, so the prospect of a resolution, I think, is possibly unlikely. I don't think there is a particular agreement as to who owns that car park or operates. It's not really a car park so much as a yard, as you say. There are deliveries as well, so that has to be managed too. And it's not. Unfortunately, the more businesses or the more restaurants you have there who want parking, and there's only, I would say, about 4 workable spaces, and at a stretch in that backyard that we have, or what we call a car park. I would also mention that the Windmill Hill Studios next to us, there's a number of flats being built now, the building's being converted, and I think part of their planning was to have at least part of that area marked out for their parking as well. So it's a difficult yard to manage, and this is the problem we've had over the years. When I moved in about 12 years ago, there weren't as many restaurants operating underneath us, and it's just increased over the years, and so the waste has increased, and the noise has increased, and the general disturbance has increased to us as residents. And this is Mrs. Mills has complained frequently to the relevant authorities about the noise and disturbance, and it can get quite difficult to live with, especially I'm an essential worker. I work shifts, I work nights, and I work shifts that I have to get up early in the morning. All of it is can be detrimental to my quality of sleep. But it's also about our quality of life as well. Accruement of waste means, say, rats and foxes, and all of it feels sometimes like we are almost at the mercy of the behaviours of the businesses around us, and it feels a little unfair, and that's why we've made these objections.
Thank you very much to both of you, and thank you both very much for coming. It's always great to have residents present. It helps the committee decide on a course of action. I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. Do you think that if we put in a strong limiter, there's additional soundproofing and a reasonable dispersal policy, that will help?
I think that might help. I also think that the hours ought to be reduced, that the restaurant ought to close earlier if indeed the business they say they're conducting will be conducted. I don't see the need to be open as late as they're proposing.
Oh, can I just make a point?
Sure.
I also noticed when I was reading through that every public holiday they want to extend the licence till 3 a.m. in the morning with live music.
Thank you. We will take that into account. Councillors, any questions? No? Councillor Gunn, no? Thank you very much to both of you. There will be an opportunity in a minute when we go into a main discussion for sort of everyone to speak to everyone. So, which we will move on to now. So this is the discussion part of the committee, which is really open for anybody to speak to anyone. We try and make this as open process as possible. So Daniel, go ahead.
It was just that point about the 60 capacity. Do we have an idea of how many tables that you have, any guests yet? That indication?
Yeah, the capacity is about the same basically, so it hasn't been extended or anything like that, so the capacity is about the same, yeah.
So would you be happy for that to be, as part of your licence, it would list it as 60 as a capacity?
Yeah, I mean, 60 to 65 would be the maximum that would fit in there, but yeah, it would be between 60 and 65 people.
Okay, thank you. That was one of my questions I was going to ask, so thank you for that. The councillors, have we got any questions? No. Have you got any questions you'd like to ask to anybody?
No, I haven't.
No. Mr. Panchal?
Yeah, Chairman, just we're getting into the discussions. Daniel's put the points in, and I'm looking at, and I've heard you saying that the hours be reduced. We've already reduced the hours of the. I'm talking to the hours have been reduced. Are you happy with that? With the sound limiter, the hours reduced, the dispersal policy that we're going to bring in. We're going to get in touch with you every now and then. We're going to leave a mobile number to make sure that you can get in touch with us. Would that keep you a bit more secure than what you're thinking?
I think it's difficult to answer that question without having experienced how you're going to manage the premises, but they're positive signs.
Because you can always, when I say this, if you're happy with that, of what we are bringing in and what we are suggesting to the committee to bring in, you can always bring us back here. Let me tell you that. And then when you bring us back here and when we are defaulted, we will the committee can easily revoke our license and we would be without a business. So we wouldn't like to do that. What we would like to do is what we are proposing. We would like to stick to that, and we wouldn't like to come back to this committee here.
I think that's a very valid point.
Yeah.
It's not often that the applicant makes the point that anything they do wrong outside of the licence can call them straight in front of back into the committee. And of late, there has been premises that have lost their licences or have severely reduced hours because of it. So that is always an option to you. If anything goes wrong, you can contact the licensing authorities and they will bring them back.
Yes, I expect if we are disturbed, we probably will. But yeah, I've personally had to swap my shifts to attend today. It's not it's not an easy process.
And it's something we don't want to do all the time.
No.
To keep phoning up the council and asking them to come out to register the noise that you're making. I've sent texts to your boss and that, and he's replied back. There's copies of what I've sent out about can you turn it down. I've never ever asked you to turn it off. I've asked you to turn it down. Oh yes, 5 minutes, but that 5 minutes goes on and goes on and goes on, and sometimes it's gone 1 o'clock before you have actually cleared that restaurant out. The music has been turned off.
I can assure you that's not going to happen anymore.
I can assure you that when they've been within an hour or so, you've actually turned the music back on. But I don't want to drag them out because they've already been out. So you don't confide to what you've been asked to do. And now you're asking, and then you're asking for this other extension. What about my quality of life? I can't go to bed. And they've been into my bedroom, some of the council people, and they've heard that I can't even go to bed. So I have to wait for you to turn your music off, and your customers dancing and singing, well not singing, they're shouting actually because they're drunk. And they want to be louder than what the man is with a microphone. I'd like you to come and live in my house for a weekend And also this Saturday, I didn't think you had a licence to play music. Saturday afternoon, you were playing music, because I could hear it.
Ma'am, we can assure you that that's not going to happen. We can assure you with the conditions put out.
I was assured that there was soundproofing going to be put in the restaurant when it was being
I think,
refurbished.
thank you. I understand that it's difficult, but
Yes.
It's been heard, and I completely accept how difficult it can be sometimes. But all we can do here is look at the evidence in front of us. The committee will certainly take into account the noise, which is why I think it's been a substantial part of our decision. Councillor Gardner.
I have a question to the two ladies. What hours would you actually like?
I think that perhaps it seems to be a little strange to ask us that question, to be honest, with respect. I think around 11:30 at night is perhaps a reasonable cut-off point for music and that sort of thing. In terms of people getting to sleep at night, certainly from around 10 o'clock onwards, I think you would deem that a reasonable bedtime. It's also because personally I work night shifts as well, so I need to sleep in the day too, and it's not like I don't demand absolute silence. I live on a busy road, and I have done for past decade or so, so it's not a case of wanting silence, it's just a case of wanting the background hum to be tolerable. So yes, I mean in terms of sound limiters and things like that, that's a good idea. I'm slightly concerned about summer coming along and because people, businesses will put their windows open because they want ventilation, but so do I. So you get to a bit of a difficult situation if they're playing very loud music. That becomes fairly annoying fairly quickly. But yes, in terms of finishing, perhaps 11:30 is a reasonable time at night.
And also, do they need live music? They can have music, but it don't have to be someone with a microphone. Do they have to have the live music? So it's something even more? Just have ordinary music, like you go into a restaurant for a meal and talk. But then you're getting the customers dancing and singing as well. So it's making more noise. Do they need live music?
Can I just
if
say
it's supposed to be a restaurant?
Thank you for that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot about that, but I was just thinking what you would regard as, if you're living above, as reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stop that there unless there are any other pressing questions. No. Thank you very much for that. We will now go on to closing remarks, and we will start off with Ginny.
I have nothing further to add, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, in which case we will go on to Daniel.
Nothing further to add, Chairman.
Thank you very much, in which case we will go on to the residents.
I don't think we have anything further. No, I don't think we do.
Thank you very much, in which case we go on to Mr. Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, all we can say is we have worked along with the SBET. We are going to make sure the four licensing objectives are robustly promoted. We're going to make sure that sound limiters and matters which are put forward and which are of a concern will be looked into. And we feel that the reduced hours of the live music be considered and the application be granted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Panchal. Thank you all for coming today, particularly to the residents. I can assure you that the committee will take into account all of your comments, and it's always helpful when residents come in because it helps us get a feel of what it's like. The subcommittee will now go away and deliberate. You do not have to stay for this part, and then in about sometime in the next few hours it will make its decision. You will be contacted this afternoon by a member of the licensing team. Alternatively, you can watch the decision live on YouTube when it is delivered. Apart from that, I'd like to thank everyone for coming, and I therefore close this part of the meeting. Thank you.